All right, so first things first, we're going to be talking today about our new NVM series. We're going to give a little bit of an introduction to it and talk about some of the new tools and things that we've added to Q-SYS Designer to get into that. Just in case you signed up for the wrong webinar, wanted to give everybody the subject. Dan, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Lovely. Let's get into it. So for this, we're going to actually talk a little bit about why NVM is part of our portfolio, why we've expanded our video offerings to include it. We're going to talk about the hardware, the encoder and the decoder that we've got that we've added. We're also going to talk about the software updates. I think the software updates are as important as the hardware updates in the case of NVM. So we're going to talk about those. And then we're going to sort of talk about how we deploy this at scale and how those tools can be utilized. And I'll get into Q-SYS Designer and let you actually see what those tools look like a little bit too here at the end of this. So that said, let's get into it and let's start talking about some NVM stuff. In order to do that, though, I think we actually need to take a pause and talk about the NV series. You guys are all probably pretty familiar with our NV products. They've been out and around for a while. And they sort of were built on these four tenets of design. We wanted them flexible and scalable. We wanted a mix of I/O and capability on the boxes. We used Shift, which is our proprietary encode and decode codec. We wanted to have integrated AV bridging. We wanted to be able to do conferencing with the NV series. And we really wanted to integrate them into our full stack AV platform. We wanted to integrate them into Q-SYS Designer and have them be an integrated part of the ecosystem. And I think we've done pretty well with that. I think for me, it's worth talking about these for a few minutes because we're going to then talk about the other the NVM boxes. But we have three boxes in the NV series, the NV32, which can be a core and an encoder or a decoder. It's also a 3x2 video switcher, kind of the Swiss Army knife of conferencing, as I like to call it. It can do a little bit of everything. We have our NV21 that can be an encoder or a decoder, has AV bridging as well, but also gives you the ability to have single laptop USB-C connection, say at a podium or a conference table. And then we have the NV1HWE, which is our wall plate encoder, which again, all three of these are running on Shift. And a couple of the things about Shift that are really amazing are also really constrictive. Shift is really low latency. One of the key pieces to Shift is that it will actually change your bandwidth based on the content. And it changes the compression algorithm based on whether or not it's a video playing or whether or not it's, say, presentation slides or just a conference call. But the ability to do that is very processor and power intensive. That's something that really, as we started to look at more cost-effective video distribution solutions, Shift became almost something that stopped us from getting into that lower cost ecosystem. So we started looking at some other options. So again, back to our NV series, and what we've done to this is we've really added the NVM as an expansion of our video offerings. I think a lot of people look at this and look at NVM and go, okay, well, this is going to replace NV. They really, we want them to work together and we want them to be one cohesive video ecosystem. And I think we've actually gone a long ways toward doing that with the release of NVM. Yeah, I'm not, Dan's answering the toothpick question. I wasn't going to answer the toothpick question. Somebody, when I said Swiss Army knife, somebody in the Q&A asked if it had a toothpick, which was pretty funny, I'll admit.
Who interrupts meetings with sarcasm? I can appreciate that, Mr. Anonymous at NV. So,
indeed. So really, we've added the NVM, and the NVM is built on three different tenets that we want to be able to scale video seamlessly. We also want to be able to deploy faster, even at that scale. So even though the scale is going up, we don't want the deployment time to also go up along with it. And then again, we still want to be able to build these systems into the AV platform. So talking about these just a little bit more, expanding the video experiences to a broader range of spaces. I think one of those is from a cost perspective. I love the NV32. I design with the NV32 every day. I put it into more designs than I care to count, and probably would be an appalling number for everybody here. However, it is expensive. When you get into using Shift as a codec and using the box and all the features, it's not, you don't want to put an NV32 behind 300 displays in a casino. So we really wanted to bring to market products that allowed us to do those big full-scale deployments, and then also really not have as many features. I know that sounds awful to take away features, but we didn't want them to have as many features so that they could be, again, cost effective in the market. Deploying faster, we're going to get a lot into these deployment tools in the next couple of sections of this webinar. So I'm not going to really spend a lot of time on it here, but just know that if you want to deploy at scale, you can't have the same tools as deploying in a conference room. You've got to have things that give you economies of scale and provide some semblance of automation to routing and matrixing of video and even audio signals. And then for us, we wanted all these tools built into the platform. I always like to say when I teach the architect class that Q-SYS grew up as an audio company, and we did really. And we've added video to our portfolio sort of after audio. Audio was pretty well baked by the time we started adding video to our portfolio. And I think that with the release of NVM, we've really made some massive steps into making video be a much more integrated component to our platform and to our software. And that was definitely a goal. It was really one of the key goals that we were looking at when we created the NVM product line. And then again, just rehashing that we wanted the experience to be uniform. We wanted to be able to get into much bigger spaces, and we also at the same time wanted to keep to some of our basic core values, one of which is really keeping everything on the network. I don't think Q-SYS would ever in my lifetime create a video matrix switcher. Everything needed to stay on the network, needs to stay part of the ecosystem, and I really think that's what we've got with NVM, and that's sort of why NVM has become our product that we're using for these types of spaces, and again, why it's part of our portfolio now. That was quick and easy. So why we've covered. Now we're going to talk about the hardware. The hardware, there's not a lot of hardware. We've got an encoder and we've got a decoder, but they are worth taking a look at. So the initial release has two products. They're powerful. They are paired with the software upgrades, and it's pretty incredible to me what we're capable of doing now. But let's start with the encoder. The encoder has two flavors. There are two SKUs, the NVM 302E and the NVM E2, and we'll talk about what those two are here in just a second. Looking at the back of the box, we've obviously got our PoE network connection. We have two HDMI inputs. We have USB-A for HID routing. We have USB-C for both HID routing and AV bridging. This is not a capability at the moment. This is something that I am quite confident is under development and will be released as soon as it is stable and flexible and usable for all of us. But that is the goal for that USB-C connection, is to have AV bridging there in the future. And then we've actually got some I/O here in terms of control. We've got two RS-232 ports and two IR ports. You might be thinking, well, IR needs to die a slow and lonely death somewhere on a highway in the middle of the United States. But it's not going to, especially in the sort of what I would call prosumer world of distributed video. When you have a a sports bar that has 32 TVs, somewhere somebody is still controlling a direct TV box. So we wanted to make sure that when we're putting these boxes into different environments than we've put video boxes into before, that we had the connections available to make sure that we could control anything that ended up behind the display as well as the display itself. So talking about the two different SKUs, you guys can read the text on the screen, but basically, if you buy the 302E, it allows you to have a single 4K 60 444 stream. So one encoder, one encoded stream. And that is on HDMI input one. When you buy the 302E, HDMI 2 just doesn't work. I made that mistake a couple of times when I was setting mine up. I was, why isn't this working? Oh, I'm plugged into two, not one. And then when you buy the NVM E2 bundle, it's the same box and the same encoder, but you can then do two 4K 30 444 streams out of that with the license on board. You can also, if you have a 302E and need to upgrade it, you can buy the license. And I feel like I'm glad I'm doing a webinar because every time I say license in a training class, people like throw things at me. But I think that this is good because we wanted to keep the cost of the 302E down as far as we can, again, to be cost effective for the marketplace. But you can add the license to the 302E, or you can buy the NVM E2 bundle that actually comes with that second stream license. So
let me just pop in real quick. We haven't gotten a question about it, but maybe someone's thinking about it. These run on both the encoder and the decoder will run on PoE plus, just type 2, class 4, so 25, 20 some watts. If you need more charging power out of the USB-C or A, then it will go up to, the encoder will go up to PoE plus plus type 3 class 5. Just want to throw that out there. So
that was actually in the next slide.
Sorry, I shouldn't have.
No.
Sorry.
It's
Jim Post. Does the E2 support auto switching?
It does not, as far as I know, but that's a question. I don't actually have an E2, so I haven't played around with it to try it. But I do not believe it does. It may in the future. You can still, just like any other encoder that we make, you can still have okay, I know that I have my plus 5 volts. I know I have valid format. Those are still control pins that you can access. So you could actually make it auto switching if you so chose.
So we have another one here. Can we use HDMI 1 and HDMI 2 as a 2x1 switch without the additional license?
That's a great question too, and one that I hate to say I'm not 100% sure of the answer, but I do not think so. When all I have are the encoders, the 302Es, and my HDMI 2 just doesn't work. It would be nice if we could, but at this point, I don't think we can. Hopefully that is something that we get to. MCR control systems and was a room look view. I don't know the answer to that at all. Let me read the question out loud. Is Q-SYS coming up with MCR control systems similar to Crestron's room look or room view? And I don't think so. I think that we're using Reflect for most of those functions in terms of the room look or room view. And you can always build something like that on a UCI or on a platform. But as of right now, we don't have anything that's inherent or native or on the roadmap that I know about. And to be fair, there's not much on the roadmap I actually know about. All right. So going on back to this is from the spec sheet for the 302E. I put it on here again to note that HDCP compliance. We can do 8 channels of PCM audio, which you can actually pull off and route in Q-SYS Designer. Go back to hey, we are still an audio company. And then, we do sell a rack kit. The 302E and the 302D are the same size as the MB21. So the really cool thing is that the rack kit will actually work with the MB21 or the NVM boxes, and you can sort of mix and match them as you need to. Let's see what else. The LAN port. Cool thing about the LAN port is it's now a 2.5 gig LAN port. We're not going to start running out of bandwidth. Now, I'm not going to say that every network switch is 2.5 gig, but the decision to go to a LAN port with more capacity, I think you're going to see that more and more, especially in like the everyone doing this as we want to push more and more stuff down the line to a single box. You need a bigger pipe to do it in. And then Dan has already stolen my thunder about the PoE information. One note that the PoE plus or PoE plus plus on the encoder is unique to the encoder only. The decoder does not have that capability. So moving on to the decoder. The decoder is pretty much the same size box, same size everything. We don't have a decoder that will decode multiple streams. It is a single stream coming in. It will do 4K 6444 as long as you're sending it 4K 6444. We did also, though, include the RS-232 and IR ports. I think those are important. I think the more you distribute video, the more you need local control ports. And then same thing, we have USB-A for HID routing, and then the USB-C HID routing, and then AV bridging is under development and on its way to us as soon as I think they can make it work. And by the way, will it do AV bridging was like the most commonly asked questions by the internal AETs when we actually first got word about the boxes.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll top, and hi, Jim Post. I know Jim Post. Do you think we will get higher wattage USB-C on the encoder, similar to the MB21, by adding a local power supply? At the moment, I honestly don't. There is no power connection on the encoder. So I don't know that that's something that's going to change because the actual form factor of the box would have to change to be able to supply an actual additional USB-C power. And since go ahead.
I would also say it's not the intent of this platform. The intent of this platform is to be able to, do those multi-display areas and things like that. More think casino, sportsbook, hotel sign, things like that. That's kind of the primary intent with this platform. So.
And then since we're taking a quick pause here, I'll go ahead and answer Jason's question. We do have in-person training. We have an experience center in Costa Mesa, California, where our headquarters are. And we have an experience center in Austin. And we have an experience center to be on its way soon in New York. And we offer in-person training classes at all of those. When you log into the training tool that we have for online training, next to the online training, there's actually an in-person training, and you can see what those class offerings are. So just to give you that information.
Yeah.
And then
Jason, is reach out to your, you can email me if you want, dan.waltons@qsc.com. I'll change my name up here in the title so that you can get that spelled right. And then I can point you to who your regional support team is, and they can let you know what classes they've reserved in us.
Yeah, and we routinely give level 1, level 2, level 2, and all of the UCI and control classes are taught. So we do teach a pretty full schedule of classes at those training facilities. And don't listen to Coy. I like Costa Mesa. If you guys are looking at the Q&A, our main training guy for Austin is actually on this webinar at the moment. All right, so back to NVM. You can see the specs, same sorts of things for the decoder. You can still grab the 8 channels of audio. You can still have all the same capabilities. I do think, Dan talked a little bit about the PoE and being able to run these in PoE plus. I think that's a big thing. I've seen a lot of obstacles happen because our NVE boxes require PoE plus plus. And I really like the fact that we can just run these on straight PoE plus. I think it's a pretty important thing to have that capability to be able to put these boxes in more places and also just lower the overall ownership cost of them by not having to have a network switch that has that massive power supply built into it as well. Um, all right, I'm going to do two more slides and then we'll get to the questions. I love the questions. That's awesome. So comparing NVM with NV, this is a really good slide that sort of shows a bunch of the things and a bunch of the capabilities of both different platforms. This is where I actually will stop because I haven't said it all the way through to now. The NVM, the M stands for MediaCast, and one of the nice things with using MediaCast is we're also already using it with our camera, and it's based more on an industry standard video codec as opposed to a proprietary like Shift is. And I think that actually makes it a little bit easier to start integrating other devices and using the NVM in more and more applications and situations. That said, the next question that I always get when I talk about this is, well, can we integrate the NVM and the NV? It actually says here coming soon, supported in Q-SYS Designer software future release, but I've actually had my NV32 set to MediaCast encoder mode and have it working through to my NVM decoders in 10.4. Which is a really important thing, is being able to take systems that are already out there in the field and upgrade them using NVM. Also being able to mix and match based on the application. Like say I have an equipment rack, and in that equipment rack, I have 3 DirecTV receivers. Well, if I need to create 3 streams, why not use an NV32 and then send that via MediaCast out to the rest of the world? This opens up a whole world, and I think this actually allows everybody to understand that we're not trying to have NVM replace NV. We're trying to actually make the ecosystem bigger. So that is a pretty important feature for us. And then again, we're going to start talking next about the platform. So I think really important to understand is that these things are fully integrated into the platform. And I think with the addition of Vision Suite Designer into our Q-SYS Designer ecosystem, we realized that those embedded pieces of software really make the ecosystem grow up a lot and add a lot of depth and capability to it. So we're going to talk, I think, next about those tools and what we've added to the ecosystem for NVM. So I've already said all the things I wanted to say about this slide on the last slide, so we'll just keep on moving. But we're going to talk about, we've actually added components in our schematic library. We've added inventory items, and we've added embedded software. So we're now going to sort of talk through all 3 of those things. But before we do that, I'm going to answer Josh's question. Is there a plan to support multi-display video walls with the NVM series? I can't answer that with any level of definition, but I do think switching to MediaCast opens up the door for those types of capabilities. I wish I knew the roadmap further than the next 3 or 4 months to tell you if that was happening or not happening officially. But using MediaCast opens the door for all of those types of manipulations of the signal. The next one is, can you use the USB routing to pass a secondary network connection via USB dongles? No, Mark, we can't. It doesn't have the bandwidth. It is the bandwidth of USB HID, so it's not meant to have that kind of bandwidth to do that kind of network pass-through. However, upgrading the network port on the NVM boxes to a 2.5 gig opens up the capability to have maybe even multiple VLANs or more data passing through. Those are not current capabilities, but we're getting there. On the NVM devices, NV devices in the web GUI, what actually happens when you tick the option to use with any PoE, PSE? Horrible things happen, don't do it. Oh wait, that serious answer. What that is it allows them to sort of operate in low power mode, but you start to get a lot of inconsistency in the operation with the NV boxes. I've seen where that like an NV32, if you're running say more than one stream, some of the streams start getting interrupted. But the idea is to like get it online and get talking to it. And that's why that checkbox is really there. Being able to sort of troubleshoot what's going on your network and figure out why something isn't working. That checkbox gives you the ability to have the box kind of come online, but not necessarily do everything it's supposed to do when you get that in the when you check that. All right. Can we ingest analog audio into the decoder, perhaps with a USB sound card? That's a great question and one I haven't played around with. The USB-A ports are for HID, but there's not to say that when we open up the AV bridging, you won't have the full capability of it being a USB sound card. So I would bet not now, but soon. Oh my God, I'm not even going to get through this presentation with all the questions. Can
We
you
may have
come?
few, but let's try to burn through. We'll see.
Yeah, let's see. There's just a couple more. Can you comment on latency between NV and NVM? NVM latency is a frame or two of video. That's actually what's documented in our spec sheet is 1 to 2 frames of video. NV, because it uses shift, it is a variable latency based on what the content it's looking at and all of those things. So that's a hard one to comment on. I mean, it could be as low as 30 or 40 milliseconds. It could be 100 milliseconds based on what actual content you're trying to run through the codec. Let's see, will the NV series be able to decode the NVM MediaCast in a future release? Not that I'm aware of. I think that we want to be able to use the NV series to encode, but decoding, I don't believe we're going to be able to decode MediaCast. Now, that said, you already have the capability of bringing a MediaCast stream into an NV32 and sending it out the video output out HDMI 1. If you've ever done that with one of our cameras, you still can do that, but it is still really operating on the shift side of things. You know, the NV series, I don't want to get into the technical specs of the box because I'll start saying things that aren't true. But as far as I know, the NV21 won't be able to be a MediaCast decoder. And the MediaCast functionality that's already in the NV32 for bringing in a camera or a stream is going to stay the way it is. All right, so I'm going to actually skip both of these questions, but I'll answer them really quickly. Can the NV21 in bridge mode display the USB-C connected laptop on its HDMI output? Yes, and it is an input and it can go out the output. What is the end-to-end latency of both NVM and NV? I don't have those exact numbers. And again, NV, it's going to vary. NVM, NVM, all we've been told at this point is it's 1 to 2 frames of latency. And then end-to-end is a little bit harder to check because you've got a network in there, and if it's 3 network switches versus 1 network switch. So I don't have those specific statistics.
Presently, we're not seeing any lip sync or issues.
Yeah. All righty.
Could push it to that level.
I wish I knew those exact answers. It makes me feel dumb to not be able to answer those things. All right, so let's get into Q-SYS Designer and the updates to Q-SYS Designer. Please note that this is reflective of Q-SYS Designer 10.4 and future. Anything before 10.4 and these things that we're about to talk about are not in there. So just be aware, this entire slide is to make you guys look at the 10.4 so we can move on. So starting in 10.4, one of the first changes that's happened in our video components is that there's now 2 routers. One is a camera router and one is a MediaCast router. We've actually added these for very specific reasons. And you can see that there is actually a difference between them, and I'll show you that on the next slide. But the camera router is the old MediaCast router. So if you actually open up a file that was created in, let's just say 9.12 or 9.13, and you open it up and you had a MediaCast router in there, you open it up in 10.4, that MediaCast router will be renamed to a camera router. So just so everybody is really super clear, the camera router is our old MediaCast router. The MediaCast router is now the new MediaCast router, and that's not confusing at all. So talking about what the features are of what they can do and what they can't do, a couple of really big things have been added. Is we can now cascade MediaCast routers. So you can route MediaCast to MediaCast routers to another MediaCast router, and so on and so forth. And then we've added the capability to have NVM connect in and out of our MediaCast routers now. So the new MediaCast router, you can have a camera coming in, you can have an NVM coming in, you can have all of those things coming in. The only thing that we've lost, and I think it's a temporary loss, but don't quote me on that, is that we've lost the camera control proxying, where in the camera router, the old MediaCast router, you could actually have a camera going to a video bridge, and you could have the camera controls on the video bridge, and they would route back through the MediaCast router, or the now camera router, and control the camera. That feature is not available right now on the new MediaCast router. So just a couple of quick things that you can sort of get your heads wrapped around what they can do or what they can't do. And then also, just like the old MediaCast router couldn't be routed to other MediaCast routers, the cascading is still not capable with the camera router. So just to give everybody the 411 on our new MediaCast router, I'm actually as excited about the new MediaCast router as anything else. So hopefully you guys will see how much it'll improve your lives as we go along. Then the next thing we've added in this, you see the camera router, you see the MediaCast router. We now have this thing called an NVM proxy. It's actually a virtual control device that allows you to dynamically change what you're controlling in terms of the NVM ecosystem. And as we talk more about the inventory items and the routing groups and those things, you'll sort of understand what I'm saying. But basically, if you were to program a bar with 3 displays right now, each of those displays, you'd have to program the control of those displays. And you'd have to have each one of them systematically put into your file. The way the NVM proxy works is it allows you to say, well, I know all 3 displays are the same. And even if they're not the same, this would still work and be like, from the touch panel, I want to control display 1. And the proxy just basically routes what you need to route and becomes this sort of nice virtual control and data matrixing router, which is really kind of a nice thing to be able to do without having to specifically control each and every one of those specific devices. It also will control sources or displays or any of those things. I mean, really, I don't think that I have fully explored everything the NVM proxy can do, but the idea is that if I route satellite receiver 1 to 5 displays, the controls on my UCI should be the satellite receiver 1. If I route satellite receiver 1 to 3 displays and satellite receiver 2 to 3 displays, then I have the ability to say, okay, I want to control satellite receiver 1 or receiver 2. And all of that can be done through the proxy without having to write a lot of control code to make that happen. I think that's the thing that we're trying to get to with all these things about scaling up video and scaling up the way we're doing video, is to add tools that keep you from having to write a lot of code. All right, so now we're going to talk about, we talked about the 3 new video components. Now we're going to talk about the 3 new inventory components. We have the NVM 302D, the 302E, and a new component called a routing group. These are inventory items. One thing to be really clear about, these are inventory items. They are in your inventory, and it means if you're changing the properties of your inventory, you have to push your file. So the idea with some of these is to get as much of it done ahead of time as you can, and then use the other tools that we have, like the NVM proxy, to do all the dynamic changing of controls. All right. So routing group, we're going to talk about all three of these, but the routing group is the one that's the funkiest one. It's think of it as a virtual matrix video and audio switcher. My brain, I kind of actually think of it like if you've ever dealt with like a big matrix switcher, like a big Ross or one of these, like I'm going to route video over a whole building. I actually think of the routing groups as the layers that you can create in those video switchers, where you can create a layer that has these 8 devices in it, and then you can create another layer that has these 7 devices in it. And I like to think of the routing groups that way. It's just creating little matrix mixers inside Q-SYS Designer that will talk to all the things that you put into that matrix mixer. All right, I'm going to stop here and answer a question. NVM availability for the US market, I believe August is the best answer I've got for that. Can the proxy detect additional NVX nodes? I'm assuming you mean NVM because we don't make NVX. And expand the virtual matrix without a restart, loss of signal to existing nodes. So the proxy doesn't actually detect additional inputs and outputs. The proxy is a control device. The routing groups, if you make changes to the routing groups, you do have to push the file. But we'll talk about all those things. I think it'll become a little bit more clear as we talk through some of these things. All right. So let's talk about the inventory items first. There are a couple of key things that we've actually added inside the inventory item that is worth it. How many times have you had to build a file with an NV32 and then gone back and been like, crap, I forgot to add the AV source, or crap, I forgot to add the AV display. And why isn't it working? Well, I don't have a display hooked up. We've actually eliminated that. We've actually put the AV display and the AV source inside the components as subcomponents, which means they're already tied to the encoder or the decoder that they're associated with, which means no HDMI wiring. So if you look at what I've shown here in the slide, I have the encoder routed to the decoder directly with no matrixing in between. And I have the source and the display, and this is a functional system. So we've started to get rid of some of the wiring that you have to do in your system to make these things work. I think that's actually pretty exciting.
Well, the price is going, so anytime we can limit the price.
Yep, time is money. And then the next thing is sort of the some other little things that we've added to this. One, we've added the capability of friendly names, and the friendly names can be dynamically changed even while you're online using NVM Manager. So these friendly names also track all the way through the signal path, which is really cool. You can see how awesome my laptop is, although it wasn't all that awesome this morning before the webinar. But you can give things those friendly names. You can give all of your devices friendly names. You can give control components friendly names. And those friendly names are now built in. Like a lot of times you would have to write a Lua script to translate HDMI 1 to laptop and do that translation. And we've done that for you. We've sort of built that in. It's pretty cool. The last thing on the inventory items is every input, HDMI input and output also includes a preview stream. That preview stream is there whether you use it or not, whether you want to use it or not. But boy, have I found how much easier troubleshooting is, how much easier it is to throw things on a UCI, because I can now just grab all those preview streams and go to town. And then just to give you the tech specs on the preview stream, it's up to 360p 30 plus 1 frame per second. So that's kind of the spec on what you're getting if you were to put it on a UCI. I can tell you though that it's been pretty cool to see that. So like you open up a routing group and you can just see all your sources and see what video is on each of them. I think it's pretty neat. All right. So then let's talk about routing groups. You saw my little thing my little Q-SYS designer file here that has the media cast routed from the encoder to the decoder. But what if you have a bunch of encoders and a bunch of decoders? Then all of a sudden you're doing something that looks like this. And if you're an animal, you won't recolor them. But you know, if you're not an animal, you'll actually color code it so everybody knows what it looks like. But basically, you end up with something like this, or you end up with a media cast router in between where you're routing all those things. But really, what you want is for every decoder, you want to be able to have all the sources. That is a routing group. So what that really means in your designer file is you have all of those things on the left if you want to do it manually, or you can just add a routing group and then put all those encoders and decoders into the routing group, and you automatically get the matrixing that you would have to literally hand do otherwise. So some things about routing groups. You can actually do all of this in properties. You can assign a decoder to a routing group in the properties of the decoder. So you can do all this without using any tools or any software applications. But that becomes just as manual a process as everything else, and that doesn't really give you any economy of scale or any of the things that we're looking at to scale this up to big deployments. But giving you some information about the routing group. One thing that I don't have on this slide that I probably need to go back and add is the audio output of the routing group is whatever source you want to select. So you actually can, so say you have let's just use the sports bar that I've been talking about all day. Say you have that sports bar and you have, again, 2 or 3 sources in the rack and then a bunch of displays all over. You can actually just say, I want source 3 to be what's in the speakers in the room. You don't have to do any sort of more complicated anything than that. You can just pick what your source is for that routing group and say that routing group is those displays in room A. So giving some audio capabilities to match up with the video capabilities is also one of the functions of our routing group. All right, at this point, I actually am going to show you guys. I'm going to add a routing group and a couple of encoders and decoders so you can see that to a file. And if you drag the routing group out, you can also just click on any of the encoders and decoders. And if you can see over here, I am connected to one of the decoders and you can see that routing group, and I can now assign it to a routing group. So you can do all of this manually. You can do all of this in the properties of Q-SYS Designer. However, we would prefer that you use the tool that we've given you to do that. So those tools, I should say, I'm going to, Chad, I'll come back to your question. I see it. Let me finish what I'm going to finish my thought, and then I'll answer your question. So the tools we have are under tools in Q-SYS Designer. And now you'll see a new category intended up for NVM. And there's 2 tools there, NVM Designer and NVM Manager. We're going to get into those next, but Chad, I'll answer your question. Is there now a way to send media cast camera streams from core to core? Not yet. As of right now, it's not a capability. And I say not yet with every intention of the word yet being in that statement. All right, so let's talk about what these 2 softwares do. NVM Designer. NVM Designer is the I need to build it and I need to have it ready to deploy, and I need to build all the groups that I need for my system, create all my routing groups, get everything in the routing groups, get the number of encoders, get the number of decoders. It is a tool that you're going to use offline for design while you're writing your file. NVM Manager is while the file is running when you're in emulate or live on a core mode. And those things are mutually exclusive. You can't have them both running at the same time because one is completely offline, one is completely online. But they are really dovetailed together in terms of what they give you for capability. Once you build it with Designer and you push it into your core and you go online, Manager allows you to do 90% of the things that you would do while you're online. Imagine having all your encoders in a list and being able to just run down and give them all friendly names rather than having to open up every single block, every single component, make a change to, say HDCP. You can do it with all your encoders listed or all your decoders listed in one place. So you have some mass management tools with NVM Manager. All right. I'm going to answer that question. Can NV32 or 21 encoders send to NVM decoder? Yes, if you put the NV32 or NV21 into MediaCast encoder mode. And there is a limitation of resolution of 1080/30. All right, we've actually talked about this. We'll get into this in the next section. We'll actually take a look at this in Q-SYS Designer here in a second. So we've talked about why, we've talked about the hardware, we've talked about the software bits and bobs and pieces. And now let's sort of put it together and sort out how we would actually create these deployments using some of these tools. The first thing we're going to talk about is the encoder, decoder, and routing groups. I've already shown you guys in Q-SYS Designer that you can add an encoder, you can add a decoder. If anybody doesn't know of this really important shortcut, I would be happy to show them. But if you go to Add Inventory and you hold down Control and click on an inventory, you can still add them in mass. So if I say go here to my inventory and I want to add something, if I hold down Control, I can still add 30 of them if I wanted to. So you can do this all manually if you want. If you want to get in there and deep dive it on your own and do all those things yourself, you certainly can. However, I don't want you to. I want you to use NVM Designer. So we're going to look at what that looks like. And our anonymous attendee who has now asked like 35 questions, I'll get back to that question here in a little bit. We're going to use NVM Designer. So let's actually go, and it's in Tools, NVM, and NVM Designer. And you can see, let me zoom in a little bit for everybody. You can see what we've added and what you see on screen. And if I go into edit mode, I can add new encoders, new decoders, new routing groups. If I add a new routing group, what's really kind of neat, we'll just call this this can be group 1. We can have MediaCast inputs, MediaCast outputs. But what's really neat about this little tool is if I hit next, I can then say how many encoders and decoders are in that routing group. So I'm building the routing group, and you can see it defaults to 1 and 1. You can sort of see that over here. But if I want to have 4, I now have 4 encoders. If I want to have 6, I now have 6 encoders. And then if I want to go and do the same thing with decoders, let's do 12 decoders. And now if I hit create, if you look over here on the left, it added all my inventory items. So it added the routing groups. Let me scroll all the way down. So you can see the routing group got added, and all the encoders and decoders that I just put into that little quick thing got added. So I've now added all my inventory and created a routing group in the space of like 5 mouse clicks. That doesn't seem much, but if you're doing a massive deployment where you have an entire casino or an entire college campus where you've got distributed video and audio in a lot of different places, you actually now have the tools. I can now create another routing group and add another bunch of them. So if I create a new routing group and I'll give them a different location, so building 2 maybe, and we'll call this building 2, why not, is the name of our routing group. And say there's 2 decoders. Actually, I'm only going to have 1 encoder, and let's give ourselves like 6 more decoders and create that. So I've now created 25 devices, added them to inventory, and grouped them the way that I want to group them in a really quick and easy way rather than having to go into each of these. I could also have named them however I wanted. I could have located them. You'll notice that I have building 2 and I have routing group is now named building 2, so you can name them and route them. All of these tools are here for you guys to be able to do this type of video routing and distribution faster and easier. All right, let's get back to here. And so that's NVM Designer. You can set lots of things in groups. You can set things in chunks. You can have multiple encoders and decoders in multiple routing groups. I'll use a good example. I have one video signage player in a rack that I have in an encoder, and I need it to go everywhere, but I want my destination displays to be grouped by building. Well, I could create a routing group for each of those buildings, and that encoder can be put in each of those routing groups. So you really do have like full matrixing capability out of NVM Designer. And again, it sort of builds your file for you, gives you all the things that you're looking for in a video distribution system. All right, I'll take a second here before we talk about NVM Manager and answer these questions. Does that mode impact other features of the NVs or just the stream? Okay, it just affects the stream. So it's the encoder side of the NV boxes. Is there any UCI examples or tools that have been developed for managing large-scale video deployment displays, channel guides such as, yeah, so Ray, that is 100% the NVM proxy. So once you create these things in NVM Designer and NVM Manager, the tool to actually to control the DirecTV receivers, the displays themselves, that's actually the NVM proxy. And getting into how you want to dynamically manage that, like if I were building this, the buttons in the NVM proxy would be what goes on my UCI. And then under the hood, you have it sort of control the things that you want it to control. So that is actually the whole point of the NVM proxy tool. Would be nice to have this tool for all inventory items, including things like amplifiers, to be able to mass deploy a name. Yeah, you're right about that, Ray. But I mean, that's where if I'm adding a bunch of amplifiers, you still do have the ability to come here and I can deploy 100 amplifiers if I want to. I'm not going to do it because that would make my inventory look awful, but you can still do some measure of mass deployment here. All right, so go ahead.
Well, I was just, when did that feature roll out to be able to max?
The control click has been around for a long time, just FYI.
Oh.
Did I learn about it 5 years ago? No, maybe last year sometime. We're not going to talk about how much I didn't know before I came to Q-SYS. All right, so getting into the last thing, and then we're actually going to be wrapping this up. NVM Manager. So NVM Manager settings can be updated in emulation or live mode. For some of the things like resetting video and those types of things, you have to be online with the devices. They have to be connected. And it really does give you the idea, like the screenshot that I've shown allows you to actually globally set what you want for an idle screen. So we have some things in our inventory in Designer here. I'm going to close out Designer within Designer, like make that make sense. I'm going to emulate. And then we're actually going to go and open up NVM Manager. And you'll see all of our devices. And I could actually just say, hey, I want to talk to all the decoders. And I can look at the sources. And then if I want, I can actually edit. Can I edit everything? No. There are some things that are properties that have to stay, set. But anything that you can get in and edit, we're going to give you the opportunity to do that. So you can reset details. You can go to the encoder. Let's go to the encoder. And if we want to look at our sources, we can look at our sources. We have source controls. We can send commands. The coolest thing for me it's trying to come up with commands it can send. It's really funny. It'll fill in here in a second. But the fun thing is if I want to send commands to all the sources all at once, in Manager, I can actually highlight them all and send commands as groups. This is the thing that makes Manager, to me, kind of really awesome. I can edit all the friendly names. I can edit all the source types. This is taking a minute to fill in. I've added a bunch of things, but you'll actually see these things you'll see it start to fill in. And again, Manager is the tool that you use when you're live, and when you're on with the core or when you're emulating. Like I don't want these all to say AV source, so I can change them. I can change what the source type is. I can put, if it's a satellite receiver, signage player, whatever, I have control over that. I can enable and disable the outputs. So lots of capabilities. Now, is this a programming tool? No, it's a management tool. It's okay, I've got everything online, and now I want to be able to just set all the names of all my devices in one place rather than opening up every single block. And in fact, you may not have every single block in your file. We're emulating, and my schematic has nothing in it. I mean, nothing in it. And I can still manage and edit all those devices. So, the days where you have to go over to the left here and drag all of those things in just to be able to edit them or change them while you're online, that's what Manager, that's the gap that Manager is bridging for us in this new ecosystem. All right. Back to PowerPoint. Death by PowerPoint. We are going to talk, we're actually running out of time, and you can find these actually on the website, so I'm not going to get into them, but I do think it's worth looking at all these different ways that you can incorporate NVM into your designs that maybe you would normally be using NV32s and NV21s. And these are definitely worth looking at. But like I said, we're running out of time, thanks to all the questions, which are awesome. So I'm not going to really deep dive any of those, but these are really some good examples of how do we make this all super incorporated, and how can we do this with a minimum amount of programming. We want the tools to do the work, not you guys. We just want you guys to make money on the work. And even some places where you might not think video distribution, this courtroom is a good example of one that I really look at a lot, where how many times do they want everybody sitting at a council chambers, or the judge and the prosecutor and the defendant and everybody to have their own monitor? Well, now we're actually getting to a place where it's pretty cost effective to do that. And you can provide some really good tools on the UCI for them to operate the system without having to know all without having to go, I want this source going to this destination. Hey, everybody gets to see this. Everybody gets to see this. It's really kind of a difference in how we think about video scaling, especially inside Q-SYS. All right. And that is actually the end of the presentation. I do think it's worth having these last couple of slides just to sort of remind you of where we're going with this. We want to have software tools for deployment at scale. We want to have tools that make your life easier, tools that can be dynamically used even while you're still live with the system. And our NVM sort of rounds out our video series of products. It's an expansion to the portfolio, a pretty nice expansion if you ask me, and includes that sort of new set of tools to deploy everything at scale and with bigger systems. So we're going to look at some questions here. There were 3 or 4 that just came in. The mode impact I've answered. So just to be very clear, I'll expand on that question a little bit for everybody. Setting an MV to MediaCast mode does not impact anything other than the stream that it's creating. You still get the loop out, you still get the host ports, you still get the GPIO, you still get all the things on it, and the NV32 can still act as a core. I have a little system set up over here where I have an NV32 running as a MediaCast encoder, but it is also my core for my system and running all of my NVM endpoints. All right, what am I losing if I use NV series encoders in MediaCast mode with NVM decoders? You lose some resolution. I think I've said this at least once now on the call, and it was on one of the slides as well. When you set an NV to MediaCast encoder, it's 1080p 30. That's the stream that it can create. Mostly that sort of goes back to our cameras because that's what our cameras were doing was 1080p 30. So it is a 1080p 30 stream. USB bridging at the NV encoder still works, and hopefully soon it'll work on the NVM encoders as well. Are there video previews in the NV encoders when flipped to MediaCast mode? I haven't checked that. That's a great question. I don't think when I was playing around and building the system I have here that I actually looked at that. I mean, you still have it at the NVM side of things for sure. You still see, like if I have a laptop plugged into an NV32 and it's going to an NVM decoder, the decoder has the preview. I just don't remember if the NVM has the preview. I think it does, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll be real honest.
Well, and the way I'm reading it is, would the NV have a preview?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Is it the NV, like when you go into and set an NV32 to MediaCast encoder mode, if you get the video preview, and I think you do, but I can't speak 100% on that. Last, two more questions. Can these NV encoder decoders work as bright signs? No, not at the moment. They are video over IP endpoints only. Is control traffic unicast and video multicast? Well, video is definitely multicast. I can confirm that. Our control traffic should probably still be the same as it is with our other NV boxes, which is unicast. So we can now send any video input from an NVM out via media bridging into Teams or Zoom. So that's the thing that is not turned on yet, Mark. So USB or media bridging into Teams or Zoom through NVM encoders or decoders is a feature that is under development and we hope will be released soon, but it is not a capable feature right now at this point in time. Whew. And if there are any more questions, I got in under 4 minutes, man. I did this in an hour. That's pretty good.
One other thing, for those that aren't familiar with our deep dive webinars, and this is your first time, we within a few days you'll receive a recording of this, and you'll also get a .pdf, like I'm typing, a PDF version of the presentation slides as well too. So you should have some follow-up material. I know we've covered a lot. This is a new product. Also, if it was, we're probably going to run this in the next 2 to 3 months as well. So just keep a lookout if, and I would imagine there may be some little updates if we have it or whatever too. But if you just wanted to sit through it again, definitely keep your eyes peeled. We'll have one, we'll have them over the next 3 to 5 months. You'll probably see them just about every week. So it's kind of the way meaning the deep dives here is to just always have latest product release deep dives in there, and and sprinkle in some of the other topics that are relevant as well. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone showing up. I do know that the product is new to us, just like it's new to you guys. So as you see these deep dives happen further down the road, there's probably going to be a lot more answers and a lot more technical information available as we all get our hands dirty, so to speak, internally. So thanks for your time, everyone.
We have just as nerdy folks on our application engineering team as we do attending here. So we'll make this journey together. So thank you, everyone.